Takes a while. There we go. Right, so the second part of health and safety induction for lab members is a little bit more of a deep dive into the audit preparation process. So I will deliver this presentation to schools that have just joined the trust and are going through the inspection process, or schools that have got new health and safety leads that have not gone through the process before. But I think as a governor, it's really important that you know what they go through and how you can then support them. Okay, so there are three parts to this. So first one's the evaluation checklist, which we're going to look at, and then the self-audit, and then finally, a little bit more complex, is the external audit, which gives your school a score and then an action plan to work from. And as part of that, this presentation will allow you to understand the health and safety maturity model. So what's behind those scores and what do they mean? And hopefully some important and useful things that you can have a look at and implement, and also report to the labs with. So there's a lot of information on these slides. I will circulate them after, but the health and safety wellbeing audit that we buy into as a trust, and that we put our that we ask our schools to adhere to, it allows us to see how they are performing it with health and safety, and also allows us to understand where we need to support them as a trust and what work they need to do as part of in their schools. So, as I've said, this follows a process. So every October, they'll carry out a health and safety evaluation checklist. Every January, they'll do a more in-depth self-audit, which the head teacher signs off, and the lab member that takes responsibility for health and safety. And then, depending on what the score has been for their previous inspection audit, their external audit, they'll also then have a health and safety external audit as well. So this gives us loads and loads of information at school level, which gives us real good indications onto what health and safety celebrations are, what the school's doing really well at, and also what we need to maybe focus on and improve. What I will say is that our trust has got an absolute range of different abilities, different best practice. We've got schools that have just started out with us that are on their journey and just started to implement things. And then we've got schools that have been with us for ages and that are achieving 4s and 5s, which is excellent. But health and safety is always changing and it never stops. So those schools that have 5s, it's equally important for lab members and for the trust to make sure that they go through this process, because you know, for example, this year legislation's changed on fire doors, so we need to be doing 6-month fire door checks. Things are changing all the time, and 5s are really hard to maintain as well. So it's equally as important. If you've got a school that are sitting at a 2 or a 1, they see the 5s need exactly the same input from the trust and from the governing board as well. Okay, so the evaluation checklist, I've not put it on there, but there's a link there, the SLN, and you can ask your health and safety leads and they'll send it you. So this is basically a very tick box exercise that will take them through everything from fire doors through to DT and science labs, and it's just a check that the things that are absolute musts and things that should be in place are in place. So it will be, I'm trying to think of some examples off the top of my head. It'll be things like, have you got your health and safety policy in place? Are all staff aware of where it is? Have you got a risk assessment for your DT lab? So it's tick box, and then at the end you'll have an action plan of things that maybe were missing or that need improving, that then the health and safety lead will make sure are put in place. I've put there at the bottom, schools may wish to involve their governing bodies or relevant governors in the process. Now, it's up to you really as a lab member how involved you want to get. I know some lab members will actually go through the process with their health and safety lead and sit with them. Others will receive it, have a look at it, and obviously are aware of it then for meetings, and there's no surprises in it. We also have the health and safety audit. Again, I'll circulate this after the presentation, but this is a really big document that goes through every single aspect of health and safety in the school. So it's not just the tick list, it's things like, it looks at things like culture, communication, the way that information is disseminated through the school, right through to those absolute compulsory things that should be in place. Evaluation checklist, the self-audit that's done in January comes to the trust. We look at it, we look at maybe what's best practice, if there's any links between schools on things that we need to look at as a trust, but also that is the document that the external auditors will use as well. So when the external auditors come round, there's nothing new. Everyone's gone through the process during the year anyway. So again, I think as a lab member, I'd maybe ask to see that in January after it's been done. Have a look at the action plan at the back that your health and safety lead will have done. I'd also encourage, again, those schools that have got your 4s and your 5s, if they've not got anything in their action plan, maybe encourage them to think about what they could be doing from a CPD point of view. Are they going to the head teachers' briefings? Maybe, there is always something that we can be doing, even when you're hitting the excellent marks. So I'd definitely have a look at it from that perspective. Okay, so the audit process. So I think that it's really important that you understand what the schools go through, because it can be quite a stressful experience for some of our schools. We've got some schools that look at it and as a real deep dive on health and safety, and that can be quite scary actually. I had one the other week at the trust level, and I found it really stressful, because we don't want to feel like we're not doing really well for health and safety. So, it can be quite stressful. And then we've also got some schools that kind of, I'm really happy to have someone come in and have a look and to recommend areas that I can work better on. So you'll know that from working with your health and safety leads on how to gauge it and how to gauge your support. But I think as a lab, it's really important that you are aware that it's taking place, when it's taking place, and maybe ask your health and safety lead, what kind of support can I give you? What do you need from the lab? So there are 10 areas within the audit. We'll have a look at what they are in a minute. And the audit measures the effectiveness of the school or academy health, safety and wellbeing management systems. So everything's scored 1 to 5. And it's based on a maturity model. So there's a really big document that looks at the maturity model and what that means to each of the 10 elements. So to get a 1, you'll be maybe just doing very minor things within that area, right through to a 5, where you know, everything's amazing, they're doing everything, they're ticking all the boxes, and they've been doing it for a long time and they've maintained that level. So that's what I mean by maturity level. 3s are where we want our schools to be. 3s mean that everything, we are compliant legally, and we're in a good place, and it's maintaining that 3. When we're hitting the 4s and the 5s, they're for the schools that have that are not just compliant, but they're also, you know, doing the above and beyond. So as a trust, we want our schools to be at a 3. Just checking that slide to see if I've missed anything. So I've put lots of links onto the SLN. You might not be able to access the SLN, but please ask your health and safety leads and they'll get the documents for you. They are really big documents, but it's definitely worth you having them in the folder as preparation for when you do go through the external process. Okay, so I've kind of skipped ahead here. So maturity model. It's on the screen for you to see there then. So you can see the type. So level 1, emerging. The level 1 is fine. We've had some level 1s before, and that just means that we've got a lot of work to do in the year, a lot of processes to put in place. But I have seen schools go from a 1 to a 4 to a 3 because there's that commitment. And sometimes a level 1 just means we need to put some work in and we need to improve processes. And at that point, pretty much everyone buys into it, don't they? So, you know, we see schools really turn around. We've got 2s. 2s are really where new schools fall into. Schools that have maybe moved from different local authorities that have got different processes in place. And again, that's okay. But what we look at from those 2s is what has come out in the action plans and what do we need to focus on during the next 2 years. And I think it's if you've got schools that are sitting at a 2, that is absolutely fine. But there's 2 years there of opportunities to put things in place. So when they come, you know, you can say, yes, we've implemented X, Y, and Z. Level 3, that is, again, where we would really like all of our schools to be. And that means that everything is compliant, it meets legislation, and that staff are engaged in health and safety. And I think that's a really good aim. I also think as well, when you sit with your health and safety leads, is to manage expectations as well. And I don't mean that from a, you know, you're not a 4 or a 5, but it is okay to be a 3. And that means that there's room for improvement, but, you know, you're sat at a 3. And I think that's a great place to be. So 4s and 5s, we've got some 4s and 5s in our trust as well. And they're leading on best practice, but they are always developing, they're consistent, they're developing, and they don't become complacent. And that's the key really for those 4s and 5s. It's really hard to maintain a 5 as well. So if your school, for example, is a 5 or a 4 and slips, that is really natural as well. And sometimes, you know, that just means that it kind of eggs them on to get a 4 or 5 next time. Has anyone got any questions so far? Okay. Right. How it is marked then. So here you can see the areas, and again on the SLN in that maturity model document, it goes into some real detail on the types of questions, and these areas are all in the self-assessment that the schools fill in January. All of the questions that would be asked in that section are on the self-audit. So every year the schools are answering those questions in the self-audit process anyway. And what the inspector will do is look and do a bit of a deep dive and see where they sit in those areas. So we've got policy and organisation. They are really standard questions. So things like, and quite a lot of this is done before they come into school as well. So they're asked to see your health and safety policy. One of the key things that comes out of the health and safety policy is it personalised, and does it mean something to your school? So in all the sections, and it will be quite a big document, is who is responsible for checking water, who is responsible for the asbestos register, who's responsible for display screen equipment assessments. It's a real bespoke document, and it should be part of the health and safety induction and have as much information in there as someone that comes into your school needs. We've then got operational control and risk assessment. Now, I've put a star next to these because if a 3 isn't achieved in operational control and risk assessment, the school will only be as good as scored on what it is. So you can see here that the school have scored a 1 in operational control here. They can only get a 1 if they get a 1 in operational control or risk assessment, or a 2 if they get a 2. If they get a 3 or above, the overall maturity level of the school is the average of that. So you can see quite quickly how a score can be either brought down or taken up if this area scores lowly. And the reason behind that is because these are where the legal compliance areas sit. So it's things that they must, are the gas boilers being checked? Are the fire doors? Is the fire escapes being maintained? All those types of things sit within the operational control. And then you've got risk assessments, which is self-explanatory. We also look at communication. So I'd urge you to look at the maturity model, because I think our schools aren't very good at blowing their own trumpets in this area, because I think our schools are excellent at health and safety communication. And it's really hard in the midst of an audit to think, actually, what am I doing in this area? So it's things like, are we having meetings with our lab members? Are we giving them reports? Are we meeting with SLT? How do we disseminate information to staff? What are the posters around the school? Everything's in there. Got training and development. Now, obviously, we've got the training risk matrix. There shouldn't be much deviation from that. So as long as that's being maintained, then that's fabulous. We've got culture. So obviously health and safety, we've touched on this. Is it being celebrated? Is it being dealt with appropriately if it doesn't go well? Are we learning from incidents? Things like that. Accident incident management. So again, we've got my health and safety app for that. All of our schools should be scoring really well in that. Emergency preparedness. This is our business continuity plan section. Employee health and well-being, and then monitor and review. How we're reporting on that. Okay, so we've I'll circulate it again after this, but we've adopted the SLN annual report to governors. Now, this is a bit of a one-stop report that the health and safety leads and the head teachers can fill in and submit to the lead on the lab or the lab as a full. And this should go to the report. And what it does is it asks all those important questions and gives you some assurances as a lab member on things like, are they filling in the evaluation? Are they filling in the audit process? Do they understand the school's planner? So there's a planner for all of the schools that tells them what they should be doing every single month. And then kind of what actions are they taking? So I think if you take anything away from today, it's to have a look at that annual report and ask your health and safety leads to fill it in if they haven't already. Some of you will be doing it, just so you get a real good baseline on where your school's at, and to sit and discuss with them, what are their plans for the next year? What's come out of the audits? Where do they sit? I'm happy to provide that information if you want from the trust. And, you know, what are those quick wins? What are the things that they need some lab support on? What are things that maybe need some budget? Because, you know, some things are quite expensive with health and safety. But every school is unique, and it's about those school-led conversations with your health and safety lead to really get under the bonnet and understand where they're at as a school. I've put a link there onto the schools planner. It's a really useful document, but also through the Top Slice core offer that we provide schools with, we take care of quite a lot in terms of making sure that the legal checks are in place. So all of the enhanced water checks, the fire alarm systems, etc., are funded through that. The schools do pay for the actual works to be carried out, but the actual booking in of them and the SLAs for them are provided from the trust. And we are looking to shift that through to a central function as well in the next 12 months. So that is the end of the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to just stop sharing that. Has anyone got any questions on the audit process or health and safety in general for your schools? No? Okay. So I will leave it there. Please feel free to contact me or your health and safety lead if you have got any questions or you want any documents resending, or you know you've got anything that's come out of this presentation that you think of later on. My email is k.staples@manorhall.academy. But yeah, feel free. No question's a silly question. And if it's too big, which it might be, then I'll forward it on to Staffordshire County Council and they can help. But yeah, I hope that this presentation and these 2 training sessions will help you understand your role and how to support your schools further. Thank you very much.